Hello, I'm James Henry, and this is The Message.
The Message.
Well, good morning. I'm James Henry. I'm the pastor of St. James, and I'll be bringing the message this morning. And I am really looking forward to this series. It's been a number of years since I really sat down with the Scripture for a long period of time and really sort of planned out a trajectory for an entire year, where I thought I might go, what I might say, and where I thought we might dig in and find some things that would help us in everyday life. Because after all, if this thing we do on Sunday mornings really doesn't help us in our everyday life, why do we even waste our time? We might as well just, watch the pregame stuff about the Super Bowl this afternoon, because after all, we haven't heard enough about it in the last 2 weeks since the NFC and AFC championships. There are plenty of other things we could be doing, and so it's good to see you, and it's good to be together, and hopefully together we might glean some things about what God might have for us. Now, I've entitled this series, Living a Better Story. I want to take a moment to sort of unpack that, because immediately when I say living a better story, it seems to imply that you're living a kind of a crappy story already, and that maybe you need a different story, a completely different story for it to be better. What do I mean by that word better? A better story? Does it mean, a more powerful story? Does it mean a happier story, an always joyful story, a fulfilled story? What do I mean by that? Well, in some ways, it captures all of those things. And in some ways, it captures none of those things. We're going to look for clues about what better means by taking a look at this story. Now, this may be a familiar story to you, or it may not be a familiar story at all. It's actually kind of a comedy if you could read it in Hebrew. Even when I read it in Hebrew, it's not funny to me. But originally, it was kind of funny. It was kind of like a fashion show. If you imagine a little fashion show where that really needs to be not happy. Sorry to interrupt that train of thought, but my ears are very sensitive and unhappy with that. I would be like, okay, I'm not going to be able to talk to you. It's like when you have like a migraine, if you're trying to talk to somebody and you can't quite see. I've never had a migraine, but that's what I hear it's like. In any case, as I look at this text, it's like a fashion show. It's like everybody get your bathing suits on and parade before Samuel, who's shown up in town. And the truth is, it's really, God is not interested in a fashion show. God isn't interested in what you're wearing. God isn't interested in how you look, whether you fixed your hair tonight, whether you rolled out of bed and came to church in your pajamas. God doesn't care about those kinds of things. God cares about something deeper. The whole key to this passage is God's sight and our obsession with sight. Think about it. Every Super Bowl commercial is about how people look. You know, if you've seen the preview of that Snickers commercial with Danny Trejo in it, and if you haven't, all right, then that's all right. I'll let you be surprised if you're going to watch it tonight. But, it's set to the Brady's. All right, well, maybe I won't tell you anymore. In any case, the long and short is, it's all about visuals. When somebody looks different and it sets you off differently, but God tells us in this passage, I don't really care how you look. Get over how you look. Get over whether you put on makeup today. Get over whether your hair's cut perfectly. Get over whether you're wearing a cool St. James shirt or not. Get over those things, because I don't care about those things. I have seen among Jesse's sons a man after my own heart, the one that I want for king. Now, we might say that better, if we look for clues in this text, was about moving from being a shepherd, after all, to being the head of the country. And that whole dream, that impossible dream of going from essentially what we might call a nobody, a shepherd out in the middle of the country, only having the sheep to talk to. I don't know if you've ever talked to inanimate creatures for a long period of time and then tried to, get any response. Reedy looks at me like she thinks she knows what I'm saying. Reedy's my dog, by the way. Reedy looks at me like she cares what I'm saying. But the truth is, as long as I'm feeding her and letting her outside when she has to go to the bathroom and making sure she has water, she really could care less. Petting her when she wants to be petted. and not petting her when she doesn't want to be petted. That's all that matters to Reedy in her life. But she really focuses. If you've ever talked to sheep, they don't talk back. They don't say a whole lot. So it seems like, man, the better part of this story is the fact that David, everyday shepherd dude, becomes king. Although if you know the story from here on, he doesn't become king tomorrow. They anoint him king. It'd be like, taking a 6-year-old and, having him take the oath of office to be president of the United States. I promise to, defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, et cetera, et cetera. That whole, I don't think it says, but in any case, I didn't have to ever take that. But giving it to them at 6 years old, and then kind of somewhere down the road, they become king, become our president. Sometimes I think they think themselves as kings, but that's a side issue. Is it better because he becomes a king when he was just a shepherd? And does that mean that none of us will ever have a better life? Because none of us are going to be king. None of us are probably going, maybe some of you. I look at some of you, you could make some, I won't go there, but any of you could probably be president. The truth is, what would make your life better is not whether or not you're the head of a country, nation, or head of a clan, or head of a city, or head of a tribe. What makes your life better is your closeness and connection to God. And that is the key. That's what we're going to see over this series. If you want your story to be a better story, it's not about whether or not that you have big titles or a big salary or a bigger car or a certain number of children or the lack of children or a spouse or not a spouse. It's not any of those things. It's how can I make that closer to God walk that we see in this story of David. David is just minding his own business. He might have been a fantastic shepherd. He might have, but we would not know about him. How many stories do you know that have been written about shepherds? Besides Little Bo Peep. The truth is, it's a cute children's fairy tale little story, and, we hear it and we remember it as a child, and maybe, actually I can think of Little Bo Peep, and I've seen lots of cute pictures with her in her petticoats and her little crook and the sheep and all that kind of stuff like that, and I guess maybe as important as David is, but, well, there you go. You can be a shepherd. Skip my whole sermon, go home, and watch all the pre-game stuff. You got now and a couple of extra hours now. So, no, the truth of the matter is for David. The truth of the matter is for David that being a shepherd, he probably would be a great shepherd. But God had something different for him. And perhaps the use of better is a dangerous thing for us because in our lives we think everything is better. We almost always believe that wherever we aren't, it's better. The grass is greener, that whole idea that somewhere over there, it's better than where I am right now. Whereas what God wants us to be is completely happy where we are. Do you notice who doesn't show up for the fashion show in this story? David. Why? Because he's pretty good at shepherding sheep. And that's what he's doing. He's doing what he's good at already. And perhaps that's what God likes about him. He doesn't show up for the fashion show, for the selection process. He keeps the sheep. And so when it's time to make the selection process and God says, these guys look really good. But you know what happened the last time we picked out somebody who looked really good? That was Saul. Saul before David, king before David. Saul didn't turn out so good. He looked handsome, he was charming, he was strong, he had his own band of renegades, he was probably just everything you want a general to be. Kick butt and take names and everything. But in the end, he wasn't a man after God's heart. He wasn't even intrigued by God. In fact, sometimes he was so impatient for God that he took matters in his own hand. I'm not waiting for Samuel to come and make a sacrifice. I'm going to make it myself because I got to get to battle. I got important things to do. Whereas David, for all of his failures, and let's be honest, he made plenty of mistakes. We'll hear about those next week when we talk about character building. We all make mistakes, but the truth is, God sees something in you that even I can't see. And and I say even I, like, boy, I'm amazing. I sit with people who tell me their stories, and I love the stories they tell me. I love hearing what's going on in their lives, even when they're struggling. Something about being in the midst of that story and the fact that people open up and share it with you. I have this kind of intriguing, bizarre job where people tell you things that they don't even tell their spouses sometimes. And that kind of being on people's journey and hearing about people's struggles and being in the midst of that and seeing how our lives are transformed and changed by little tiny things that happen to us, and sometimes great, big, huge things that push our buttons. It's kind of amazing. It's kind of amazing to be a part of those kinds of stories that people tell me and others. What's interesting in this story of David is what makes his story better is not the title, but the closeness and the connection to God. So what else? What else about this story seems to stick out when I think about it? If seeing is a key to it all, and the idea of success is not success from our measurement, then what else does this text have to tell us about living a better story? How am I going to get to that better story, James? Because in all honesty, my life is sometimes a little disappointing to me. I had imagined something different, something more. I had imagined the companion of a lifetime being with me right now. Or I had imagined greater success at work. Or I had imagined that everything would go smoothly for me. Or I had imagined a few more bumps in the road. It's been too smooth. I've been wanting something really bad to wham me in the face. And man, it just seems to just go right along. Or I've been expecting something bigger than mediocre. Well, the funny thing about this story is the whole thing begins in disappointment. The whole thing begins in disappointment. God is disappointed. Saul is disappointed. And finally, we see something happen. What happens in the midst of that disappointment? God decides to say, listen, Samuel, you're disappointed. How long are you going to be whining about it? When are you going to get up and do something about your disappointment? You know what I learned about having a better story is sometimes you just have to do something about it. Sometimes you can't just... Let me tell you, I can whine with the best of them. I can whine. Linda can tell you, whiner, whiner, whiner. At the end of this last week, if you are picking up your letter today about your giving for last year, I fought with that computer all week long. I must have spent 18 good hours just getting it to spit the letters out. It didn't take me that long to sign them and write notes on them. It took 18 hours to convince the computer it was going to spit them out. I will never get those 18 hours back. I will never, ever get them back. They're gone. They're past. So I can whine with the best of them. Yesterday I was like, I don't even want to do this anymore. I am so done with being a pastor if it involves printing out letters that take you 18 hours to print out. I'm done. I'm done, honey. I'm just going to walk in tomorrow and hand my papers in, which in the United Methodist Church I can't do. So I have to wait until an opportune moment to walk in and hand those papers. Jeff would be completely freaked out. That's my immediate supervisor. He'd be completely freaked out if I walked in and said, I'm done. I'm just done. James, why are you done? Has God stopped calling you? No, God keeps calling me, but I am not printing another thing as long as I'm alive. Or I will throw it through the window and my whole faith will be gone. But it did print, and it did happen, and the world is good, I guess. Truth is, we can all be whiners. But what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? We can wade into the whining. We can just, I could just wallow in it. Get me on a bad day. Green Bay. I spent 2 weeks talking about Green Bay. Let's not go there. Some of you are Seattle fans, and I love you, and Jesus does too. Some of you. But the truth is, I wallowed in it for days. It's like, oh my gosh, what were those guys thinking in the last 5 minutes of the game? Seattle didn't even show up to play until 5 minutes before the end of the game. And then they won. It's kind of like Duke last night. But I'm not going there. I'm not going there. They waited till 3 minutes before the end of the game. But why do we even have basketball for 40 minutes? Why don't we just play for 3 minutes? Because that's when it's decided. All right. Well, see? Totally entertaining. I agree with you. It wasn't entertaining me to me last night. It would have been entertaining if Virginia had won. But that's beside the point. We can whine. Have you ever met anybody who couldn't whine? And even the most stoic person might be whining on the inside. Oh God, what have you done to me? But the truth is, this story says, be disappointed. Even whine a little bit about it. But then do something. Do something about it, even if it's the wrong thing. Sometimes you just have to do something. And, you learn sometimes by doing something. It wasn't the right thing, but you can sit and whine for a long time and nothing comes of it. Nothing at all. Doing something, at least something comes of it. So what I learned in this story this week, at least one piece of it, it's all about what we see. No. Hello, James. It's not about what we see. It's about what God sees. It is about being disappointed sometimes, because life is about sometimes being disappointed. But it's about bigger than disappointment. It's about doing something about the disappointment, even if it involves, and this is the last point, risk. Samuel didn't want to do what God suggested. Listen, you've whined for long enough. I want you to go down, and I'm going to, I've seen somebody I really want to be king. I want you to go anoint that dude. What is Samuel's immediate response? He's been whining and wanting God to give him an answer, but he does not like the answer God gives. Why? Because it's risky. Guess what? If Saul hears about it, he's got an army, he'll squish me all up. He'll mess me up. He might kill me, kill my whole family, my dog and everything. He might wipe me out. That's not okay. I don't want to do this. Doesn't work for me, God. How about another solution? I know we were disappointed, but perhaps there's something else we can do. Couldn't you just strike Saul down with a lightning bolt? Then of course I'll anoint somebody else. Of course. But right now there is a king, and I don't want to go and mess with that. Yeah, of course. It's risky. When you're disappointed and you want a better story in your life, sometimes it requires that you take some risks. Go some places you weren't planning on going. Do some things. Talk to some people you just as soon avoid. That is what life is about. Having a better story. Do you know we don't tell stories about people who don't take any risks? You tell me one story about somebody important, some big story you've heard that was not about somebody taking a risk. Go right ahead. Come up with one. I'll find a risk for you in that story. Because every story worth telling involves somebody stepping out in faith, in hope, dreaming. God even helped out Samuel. I don't want to take this risk. Well, it won't be too risky if you go there and make a sacrifice. Everybody will be fine with that. Go and make a sacrifice. Who's going to know the better? I will, but, if it makes you happy, this is how you take the risk. Go down there, make a sacrifice. Works out. We sometimes just need to get up off the couch. Sometimes we just have to get up off the couch. Believe me, as a person who now wears a Fitbit, because I sit on the couch plenty of times, and now, the only thing I wish my Fitbit would do, and it doesn't, one day they'll update the firmware, is say, okay, you've been sitting on the couch for 45 minutes, James. How about you get up? It doesn't do that. But, it does tell me periodically when I haven't quite made 10,000 steps. It texted me last night at 10:45. James, you've only got about 6,000 more steps to go. You could do it. Oh, yeah, of course. At 10:45 at night, I could do 6,000 more steps. I wouldn't be here preaching this morning. I would still be out walking. Now, I have made the 10,000 steps a couple of different days over that period of time, but it takes constant perseverance throughout the day. It takes constant getting up off the couch, getting engaged in life. You know what? For many of us, our stories would be better if we just got up and got in the game, got in the story. Even if we made mistakes, because guess what? Are you human? Are you breathing? You're going to make mistakes. If somebody told you that there was some magic potion James was going to hand you on Sunday morning, just like this, and I was just going to hand it off to you, take this with you. Go ahead. This, will make it all work out. They handed you something. They sold you a bill of goods because it's not true. There isn't. You got to get out there. You've got to get involved. You've got to get up off the couch. You've got to take some risks. You've got to realize that sometimes even when you take those risks, you're going to be disappointed all over again. And guess what you've learned? That risk was not the risk you should have taken, perhaps, or was exactly the risk you should have taken because it taught you all sorts of important lessons. You know what? The thing I hate to do the most in life, the very biggest thing I hate to do, well, besides, no, I won't go there, but it had to do with football. I'm not going to say that. I hate failing. I hate to fail. I don't ever like the word failure. In fact, I can learn so many words that I can use to say I didn't fail. I can recouch it in all sorts of terms to make it sound like it wasn't a failure. I could. But the truth is, I hate failure so much that sometimes I'm unwilling to try. It has paralyzed me in my life. If you're anything like me and you don't like to fail, I don't know anybody who loves to. Go ahead, raise your hand. Do you love to fail? Anybody love to fail on a regular basis? You know what? Michael said his greatest gift. Michael Smith came out of St. James, came to faith here at St. James. He's now a pastor in New York. You know what he said our greatest gift to him was? Giving him permission to fail. Giving him permission to try something, screw it up, still love him, let him get back up and try again. That was our biggest gift to him, was to fail. Maybe we've stopped giving that gift at St. James. We've stayed in the safe zone. We've forgotten about what risk is. Maybe if we want a better story as a community of faith, maybe if we want better stories as individuals, we got to take some risks. We got to risk disappointment. We got to risk failure. We got to get out there and try again. 20 years ago, we tried this really cool new style of worship. I don't know if it still works. Sometimes I ask the question. We tried a different way of preaching. We tried video clips. We've tried everything. Sometimes I don't use them anymore. Because you know what I wonder? Is we didn't raise yet another idol up and avoid risk, avoid failure, because we found a comfort zone for us. Samuel was comfortable. I don't like Saul. I'm disappointed. I like whining. I like sitting on the couch. I like not taking any risk. And God said, you got to take some risk, buddy. You got to get up off the couch. You got to get back in the game. Sure, you're going to be disappointed. Sure, you're going to fail. Do you risk failure on a daily basis? Do you risk making a mistake? I suspect you do it more often than you think. You could say hello to somebody who doesn't say hello back. Isn't that a failure? I don't know. Whose failure is it? Is it your failure because you didn't say hello in the right tone? I know some people who will say, Hannah used to be this way. She'd say hello. If you didn't respond, she'd say hello again. If you didn't respond, guess what she'd do? She would say hello again. She was, her optimism was unbelievable. She kept going at it. If you didn't immediately respond, she kept going at it. I admired that in her. She's 21 now. She still goes at it. She still goes at it. I wish I could be more like my daughter sometimes. I wanted her to grow up to be like me. Now I want to be like her. Joshua, my son, you know what I learned from him? I learned about a man of character. He didn't always get to play in the game, but his coach told us over and over again that what he appreciated about Josh was Josh and he had a meeting in the beginning of the season, baseball. Josh played baseball and said, Josh, you're not going to always get to play. Are you willing to catch in the bullpen? And are you willing to show up with a good attitude every day on time? And absolutely, Josh did. Sometimes I didn't have a good attitude about the fact I'm waiting for, they told Josh he'd play in the game and then he didn't play it. And I'd be like, oh man. I was ticked off. I was disappointed. Josh just kept persevering. Josh kept going on. Sometimes we learn more from people who are younger than we are, who are our children, than we learn from people older than we are. Maybe you don't got anything to learn from me. Maybe next Sunday we're going to have Ben and Nate get up and preach for us. You know, pretty simple, straightforward. Ben laughs at the right time. Nate was a little less enchanted with me this morning. He's sleeping now, but Ben is engaged with me. And actually, part of that was, he's waiting for my finger to be available again as a teething tool. If my finger recovers, I think I can still bend it. The truth is, take some risks. We don't expect it to be the youngest kid. David was the youngest kid. We expect to be disappointed, but we don't want to ever fail. We are sometimes risk averse, but God invites us into a world that asks that we risk all the time. And you know who set the biggest example was God himself. He risked everything when he became one of us in the person of Jesus. He risked that exactly what would happen would be what did happen. And what was that risk? That we would reject him and kill him. And guess what we did? We rejected and killed him. So, you want a better story? Get up off the couch. Make some decisions. Let some of them be wrong. Be willing to fail. But take some risks. Take some risks. And when you see me in the comfort zone, just smoothing along, push me. Push me. Say, James, I think that you're just riding along on an easy sermon series. Why don't you preach something hard? Give something to really shake us up. I'm not afraid of you. Yes, I am. I don't want you to confront me. I'm afraid you will. I tell you to do it all the time, and sometimes you do. But recently, nobody's confronted me. So after this sermon today, all of you just come, not this kind of confrontation. Come on up here. Say, James, I don't even have any idea what you said. What a waste of my 25 minutes. I would rather have listened to Chris Collinsworth. And believe me, that's saying a lot for me. I cannot stand that man to save my soul. Jesus loves him. I'm going to hang with him in the kingdom, I guess, someday, but it'll be okay. The truth is, we need to take risks and stretch ourselves. That's how we get better stories. Saying yes to God. Because a better story is just a story where we say yes to God. I'll do whatever you ask. Wherever you lead me, I'll go there. I suspect David didn't even want to be king, but it didn't matter. He said yes, and he became.